Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. This is Ricky Wheeler. I'm the CMO at Ebsta, and we're very, very lucky to be having a webinar today with Chris Edwards, who is an amazing Salesforce guru and MVP. The subject today is the secrets of success. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in February, the Salesforce Success Community reached 2 million members, which was only 1 year after hitting the first million milestone. So that's 100% growth in 1 year. And Chris is going to talk to us today about what the success community is and how it works and how you guys can really benefit from that community. Who is Chris Edwards? Well, there's his lovely picture. As I said, he's a solution architect. He's an MVP and user group leader. But to introduce Chris, there's probably no one better to do it than for Chris himself. Are you there, Chris?
I am indeed, yes. Hopefully you can all hear me.
Yes, so thank you for joining us today.
Very well.
It's worth saying, read the Ebsta blog. Chris was amazing at helping us solve a few questions about a month ago, so thanks again for that, Chris.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And welcome to Secrets of Success. So as Ricky says, we're here today to really take a tour of the success community. But there's 2 million members on Success now, so the chances are it's not new to you. Chances are you already know your way around. So what we're going to do here to make things a little bit different is just to stop at each area, talk through some best practices, and really talk about how the cream of the crop, if you like, on the community are making the most out of the resource that they have. We're also going to look at a few sort of lesser known hacks that I've discovered through my time on the community, which might just change how you use the community or maybe even how you think about it. So before that, let's do the introductions and talk about who I am and why I spend some time on the community. So I'm a solution architect for Mavens, who are a consulting partner in the healthcare and life sciences space. Before that, though, I spent about 5 or 6 years as a Salesforce admin, so owning my own org, managing that. And in both of those roles, it was really important to me to keep up to date on Salesforce releases, know all about the features, but not just what Salesforce tell you about the features, but actually what the community tells you. So, if people are having problems with it or particularly interesting use cases or applications that are change the way that feature is used. So for me, I started spending a lot of time on the community to do just that. I'm also a Salesforce MVP, and I run one of the user groups. So I run the London admin user group. So you can tell from that I'm an advocate of community. There's nothing I like more than getting a group of like-minded people together, or differing-minded people together sometimes, talking about the platform, talking about the features. And for me, success is really the mothership. It's the community of all communities where we do that. You can also read some of my thoughts around the community, around releases, around process automation on the blog, which is Salesforce Weekly. But I think let's get straight into it. So we'll start with an introduction to the success community. So for anyone who doesn't know it, you can access it at success.salesforce.com. One of the very heavily requested features is a mobile access, and you can get a lot of the features of Success working on the Salesforce Events mobile app as well. But what is it that the 2 million people that are accessing it via Success or via the app are using it for? Well, basically it's an online portal where they can find help, ask questions, make suggestions, and collaborate with other people, be they Salesforce employees or partners or other customers. The way they do that is split across a number of different areas of the system. We'll talk about most of these today. So there's help and training, where you can go to read documents, find knowledge articles, and contact support. We'll be looking at the answers community, collaboration area, the idea exchange, the listings of user groups, and also the known issues log. But before we get into each of these areas, let's just pause for a moment and think about what the word community means. Essentially, we're talking not to Salesforce here, we're talking to our own peers, we're talking to real customers and real users. That means two things for me. It means that the interactions we have on the community are authentic. They're not tainted by any Salesforce marketing speak. We're talking to real customers and we're hearing the real voices of those customers. It also means, though, that the interactions tend to be quite quick. So rather than going to one support rep, you're effectively crowdsourcing that information and talking to many thousands of people that can help you at once. And we talked about Success2M, which was the hashtag for the recent 2 million members milestone. So there's 2 million people on Success, which makes Success roughly the size of a city like Paris or Chicago. But if you spend a lot of time on Success, and as you go around the different areas, you'll often see many of the same faces keep popping up. And I don't think that would happen if you're walking around Paris or walking around Chicago. So to me, that kind of made me think, what does that mean? Well, really, it means that some people are getting more out of the community than others. Some people are getting more use from it. So today what we're here to talk about is each of these areas, stopping to take a look at some of the best practices that those type of people that are getting more out of the community are following, and to look at some of those lesser known secrets that I've discovered along the way. So where best to start then? With the Answers Forum. And I think for many of us this is what we think of when we think of success. When you log on to success.salesforce.com, you see the Answers leaderboard there front and center. So what is it? Well, Answers is really a forum for you to have your clicks-related questions answered by the community. So what do we mean by clicks questions? Well, really, if you're looking for help on custom code, Visualforce, Apex, Lightning components, or technical integrations, Answers probably isn't the best place to go. Maybe go to Stack Exchange or Developer Force. For more or less anything else, you can probably get the right answer you need on Answers. And the fact that it's answered by the community leads me on to a statistic that I think is really impressive for Answers. Of all the questions that get asked, 100% of them receive an answer. But that's not the most impressive stat. The most impressive stat is that 98% of those answers come from the community, not from Salesforce themselves. So let's talk about when you post your questions, how to make the best use of the board and how to get the most out of that resource. First thing I'll say is search first. There's a huge number of questions, and that's only growing day on day. So there's a really strong chance that your question has been answered before. However, the high volume of questions and the almost limitless number of ways you can describe the same problem mean that it might be difficult to find that needle in the haystack. So by all means search first, but don't worry if you don't find it immediately. Go ahead and ask the question. We'll come across the phrase search twice, post once later. And there's another area where that's really important. For Answers, yeah, it would be great if you could find it without posting, but don't be scared to go ahead and make that post. If you do make the post, be specific, give details. People like me that answer the questions, we can only do that when we have the right information in front of us. So let's say you're facing an error on a data import. Don't just tell us that the data import is erroring. Tell us what object you're trying to import, what operation you're carrying out. Is it an insert, an upsert, an update? What tool you're using? Whether it's all the errors, all the records that are erroring, or just some of them, what that error is and when it appears. And often, when you have an error message, and often on reporting questions as well, screenshots are really helpful. It is the case that a picture tells 1,000 words. Just bear in mind that if you can upload a screenshot to your question, you might want to blank out some of the confidential information, like maybe customer names in a report, for example. As well as being detailed, be contextual. Give us as much context as you can around not just the problem, but where that problem sits in your organization. So what edition of Salesforce are you using? The reason that it's useful for us to know that is especially if you're looking for help around automating a process or reporting across a number of objects. The best solution could be different depending on what edition you're in and what functionality and features you have access to. If the problem relates to fields or objects, then let us know any object relationships that are involved. Which object is the parent, which is the child, is that relationship lookup or master detail? That's going to really help us get to the right answer as quickly as possible for you. And any steps that you've already taken to troubleshoot that issue. That just means that we can eliminate some of the possibilities early and again get to that answer quicker for you. Lastly, be appreciative. So listen to the suggestions you receive. Often they will be suggestions to go and try something. Almost as often they will be further questions. There will be pieces of information that maybe are missing. Don't dismiss them. Don't just say, oh, I've tried it, or that's not worth looking at. There's a reason we're asking, or there's a reason we're giving you that suggestion. Secondly, know that it's a community. Now this means two things to me. Firstly, understand that we are not Salesforce, so we cannot see your org, we cannot log into your environment, but we can give you generic advice that helps you get to the place you need to be to solve that problem. And also in terms of it being a community, be grateful. Know that people that are answering the questions are doing it in their own time. So when you find the one that answers the question, just be grateful, say thanks, and one of the ways you can say thanks is by marking the answer as being the best answer. That does two things. It does three things. It closes down the discussion. It gives the person that gave you that answer the credit they deserve. But probably most importantly and most long-lastingly, it means that anyone else that faces that issue in the future can actually then find the answer, find the resolution much more quickly. So that's how to use Answers. Now we're on to the first secret, which is quite a simple one, Answers. There's not many kind of different spins on it you can put, but my secret for using Answers is that you'll learn much more by answering questions than you will by asking questions. So it's very easy to believe when you post a question to Answers that everyone that responds will already know the answer. I know from personal experience that's not the case, and there are people like me that learn, most of what they have learned in their Salesforce career has been learned through answers. They answer questions so that they can increase their own learning as well as helping you. And that really stands to reason, doesn't it? Because if I am a single administrator looking after a single Salesforce environment, there's only a finite list of problems or applications or use cases that I might need help with. If you multiply that finite list of problems by 2 million, clearly there's a lot more learning to be had there. So if you're looking to learn Salesforce or looking to expand your knowledge on the platform, definitely would recommend Trailhead. Hopefully you will know Trailhead in terms of learning resource. But Answers is a kind of another interesting way of approaching that and actually learning through not what Salesforce teaches you, but actually what people need to do, what their real-world scenarios are. And if you start answering questions, some of them you'll know the answers to straight away. You'll probably know more than you think, actually. Others, give them some thought, do some research, test them out in a developer environment, and I guarantee that as well as helping others, you'll definitely be learning and helping yourself as you go. So let's move on to looking at collaboration, which is probably the only area of success really that has more activity than Answers. So why is it so active? Effectively, because it's chatter, and we all like to chat, right? So being chatter, the things you'll find on the collaboration area of success they include profiles, so the profiles of the other community members. Recent additions to the profiles meant that you can now list any Salesforce certifications or any Trailhead badges you've earned on your profile. You'll see the feed. So the feed is really where all of the information you're following, so all of the records, all of the groups, all of the people, where all of their updates come front and center into your feed. And probably the biggest area of collaboration is around groups. There's a number of collaboration groups on Success, and some of them are around a certain feature, so workflow automation or reports. Some of them are around a certain role, so there's a group for admins, group for non-profits, etc. Some of them are geographical, so we'll more at some geographical success groups in a future slide. But this link here is probably the place to go. So this is where there is a curated list of featured groups, and I'll just pick out a few of them that I think, if you're new to groups on Success, that you should look at. There's a Getting Started group. As it sounds like, that's kind of for people that are just finding their feet and posting some of the more usual questions, I guess. There's Release Readiness, which has spikes in activity around the releases that happen 3 times a year, but actually is a year-long feature adoption resource as well, so you can always go there to ask questions around features. And the third one is Premier Central. So that's for any Premier Success customers. So if you have that Premier Success add-on, you have your own group where you can go and talk to other Premier customers and get their experience as well. But once you've found your group, what are you doing there? First thing to point out is that collaboration is much more free-form than Answers. On Answers, you tend to be asking a closed question that has a correct answer. You don't know what that answer is, but chances are there'll be a specific way of solving that problem. Collaboration is much more open-ended than that. It's really around wider discussions around opinions or best practices. The collaboration is also more feature-rich than on Answers. So as well as posting updates, you can share files and links. You can create polls to canvass opinion. And you can give thanks in the form of badges. So you see the image here on the left is a thank you badge that I can post to Ricky's profile to say thanks for inviting me to present on the webinar. But as you join more groups, your email traffic is going to go up in terms of the notifications you get from those groups. So for every group you join, one good practice is to configure your group email settings. Make sure that you have the right balance between receiving too many and too few notifications. So you don't want to drown in emails, so you might want to put your group email settings to receive a daily digest or a weekly digest. If you're the other end of the spectrum, which is more like me, I'm kind of ashamed to say, is you're actually scared of missing out on a certain discussion, then you can set the group email to fire an email to you every time. Somewhere in the middle around that kind of daily, weekly tends to work quite well. The other extreme is that if you're someone that completely doesn't live in email anymore and they live all their life in the feed, then you can turn off those notifications altogether. But one thing I really want to point out on collaboration is around posting into multiple groups. You might occasionally have a discussion or a question or a query that you think is relevant to multiple groups. So let's pick an example. Let's say you are a new admin and you want help on creating a sales report. Do you post that into the Getting Started group because you're new? Do you post it into the Button Click Admin group because you're an admin? Do you post it into Reports and Dashboards because it's a report, or do you post it into Sales because it relates to sales? You might want to get all of the opinions of all 4 of those groups. Don't post it multiple times into each of those groups, please. Instead, create one post and @mention, same way you would do on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook, @mention those groups into the single post. That means you're creating less noise for others to wade through. It means the discussion is all in one place, and therefore that whoever sees that discussion sees the full context of that collaboration. So on to the secret that I'll share for collaboration, which is actually that this is a really good place to find a lesser spotted product manager. So if you have a question or an issue that relates to a particular product or a particular feature, go into that features group or that products group and post a question or post the concern or whatever it is in there. Why is that so good at getting the product manager's attentions? Because quite often they own these groups. So quite often, if there's a group around a certain feature, the PM for that feature will own that group and will receive the notifications and check the feed of that group. It's also really good not just for answering questions, but actually for hearing the first snippets of some safe harbor information for some upcoming features. It tends to be where that gets kind of casually dropped into conversation by the PMs before it's public knowledge, before the wider world knows about it. And I just want to call out two PMs that are particularly good at interacting in this way. One is Shelley Erseg, who runs Process Builder, and the second is Damien Jolly, who works on the Salesforce for Outlook. Their groups around process automation and the Outlook connector are particularly good at getting PM involvement in. So let's move on to one of my favorite areas of success actually, which is the idea exchange. So the idea exchange is effectively the community suggestions box. It's where you can post your ideas, you can vote and comment on the ideas of others. So you'll often hear Salesforce talk about the voice of the customer, and it's the idea exchange that really is where we hear the voice of the customer the loudest. But how can you make sure that it's your voice that gets heard? First thing and most important thing on answers. This is where we meet the phrase search twice, post once again. We looked at it on answers where it's kind of important, but you'll be okay. On ideas, it's critically important. We don't like duplicate ideas. It is possible to merge duplicates, but you have to do that in quite a manual way, and it's very easy to miss those duplicates. So why is it important to dedupe ideas, and why is it important to make sure that we're searching for existing ideas before we create a new one? Well, because any idea that reaches 2,500 points is guaranteed to be put in front of the product management team for them to respond to and review it. So if you have an idea for a piece of functionality that's already got 2,000 points, rather than create a new idea that might go on in its lifetime to get an extra 1,000, and then you've got one at 2,000, one at 1,000, neither of them have crossed that threshold, put them all in one place, it passes that boundary, and it gets in front of the PM. One thing you may not know around the votes, by the way, is each vote on ideas is worth 10 points, not 1. So actually, it only really takes 250 positive votes to cross that threshold. So if you run a fairly large organization that's maybe got 100 users or 200 users, they will all have success profiles. Get them to log in, get them to register their vote, and actually you're nearly halfway there, or you're nearly all the way there in that case. So when the PM reviews an idea, what happens? Well, often they'll put a comment on, giving an indication of how likely it is, or whether they have any follow-up questions that will help them define the requirement. And then the idea will be updated with a status. A number of statuses that we have on ideas. The first two, under consideration and considered for the future. These are really where the idea is being discussed by the product team to assess its feature impact and its feasibility. And then the latter one is where they think it is possible, but it's not yet on the roadmap. That then progresses on to on roadmap, which means that development has started, but there's no known launch date yet. So they can't guarantee anything that's on the roadmap will be delivered this year or even next year, but it is at least being worked on. When the development is sufficiently advanced, it will go to pilot or beta, which means usually that it's been opened up to a select group of users to carry out some sort of production testing, some late stage testing, and hopefully what we want to see is that all the ideas end up as coming in the next release, which is when you know that your idea is only just around the corner from being rolled out to everyone and made generally available. So the secret on ideas is that Salesforce want your vote, and they want it for more reasons than you think. So let me explain what I mean by that. This isn't just a dusty old suggestions box parked in a dark corner that's hardly ever opened, and if it is ever open, it's hardly ever read, and if it is ever read, it's hardly ever acted on. This idea exchange is really true customer-driven product development. It helps Salesforce. Your ideas, your votes, they help Salesforce to define and to prioritize their roadmap. But this is the part that's slightly less understood. It also helps them to validate their existing roadmap. and to inflate the vote counts for ideas that they were always going to deliver anyway. So let's take an example. We learned on last week's Ebsta webinar around process automation. And when the process builder tool came out, it came out as an unbulkified tool. Now what that fancy word means is effectively it would work for 1 record, it would work for 10 records, but if you threw 100 or 200 or 1,000 at it, it would fairly quickly fall over. Now that isn't maintainable. There's no way Salesforce would have left that tool in its unbulkified state. But the fact that there was an idea, and a very popular idea at that, requesting for it to be bulkified, meant something, because it meant that what Salesforce could do, rather than saying, here's a new release, we fixed something that we should have, we were always going to fix. What they do then is they say, we have listened to the voice of the customer, we've responded to the clear message of our valued customer base. It also means that the more votes they have, the more idea points they can retire when that feature is delivered. And some of the PMs, quite often they're measured on those number of points they can retire. One thing that really brought this home to me recently, which is what kind of made me think of this secret actually, is Salesforce recently went onto the community and they posted and they asked people to vote for a specific idea. And the idea was the ability to relate a contact to multiple accounts. So why were they canvassing votes? Why were they asking for you to vote for it? Because, as it stood, that was the 6th highest voted idea of all time. And Salesforce were quite close to delivering it. They are quite close to delivering it. But what they wanted to do, they didn't want to deliver it as the 6th most voted for idea of all time. They wanted to deliver it as the 5th most important and voted for idea of all time. So you can see there's a lot of, there's a lot of marketing going on here. There's a lot of kind of shaping of the facts. So key message, don't feel bad telling Salesforce what's wrong, throwing your votes around, because they want those votes. In many cases, they already know what's wrong anyway. The next area I want to look at is known issues. So known issues, bugs, as we said here, like death and taxes, they're inevitable, they're unavoidable. But when a bug appears, knowledge is power. The more we know about that bug, the more we can sort of know to expect it, the higher our chances of escaping from it unscathed. So what's the known issues log? As the name suggests, there's a log of all the issues that are known to be affecting Salesforce customers at the moment. Now this doesn't include things like system downtime and maintenance windows. You can access those on trust.salesforce.com. Known issues is more about the system is up and running, but you're getting unexpected behavior. So it's things that are probably less visible, I guess. Now in terms of my best practices on how to use it, you can search for known issues. You can filter them by status or by release that they affect. When you find a known issue, you'll see a summary of it, so what's going on. Often you'll have steps to reproduce it. This helps you to see it with your own eyes effectively. And one of the most valuable things is any workaround. So while Salesforce work on a fix, they might tell you of a specific workaround you can use. Also though, you'll find any updates from product management or from support. So as that issue progresses and gets more known about it, they'll give more information around workarounds. There's also a section called reported by, which is the metrics of the number of people that have clicked this green button here that says this issue affects me. Now, that's clearly not the true number of people it affects. Not everyone who has this issue knows about it, and if you know about it, you're not necessarily going to click the button. But it does give you a general idea. Have 2 people registered this issue, or have 200 people. You're going to get a kind of an at-a-glance view of the scale of that problem. Then the issue each has a status as well. So similar to the idea statuses, they go through the issue being in review, having a fix scheduled. When you hit release in progress, that's when this widget here, is it fixed, on the left comes into play, because you can see that it's already fixed on the sandbox logins, but actually here the Asia Pacific logins haven't had that fixed yet. And hopefully, obviously, ideally we want to get it through to the fix stage. So if you find an issue that affects you, click that button. That'll do 2 things. It will add you to the reported by metrics, but it will also mean that you get an email notification when that issue is resolved. So what's the secret here? Well, one thing I just said is when you find an issue that affects you, click that button. But who actually has time to browse through known issues, finding something that affects them? Well, no one. We only tend to really visit known issues when we know there is a problem, when we discover something's going wrong. And that's fine. Being reactive is often all we have time to be when we've got other jobs to be doing. But it could be too late. That issue could have already derailed a business process that you rely on. So what if we could be proactive, let the known issues come to us so that we can keep on top of them and be made aware of any potential issues as soon as possible? That's exactly what this IFT recipe does. So for anyone that doesn't know IFT, it's if this then that, and it's a web app effectively that allows you to build recipes between different channels. So here, this link that you'll see here is a recipe that connects the known issues channel with your email channel or your SMS channel, or however you want to be notified. So what we're doing here is whenever an issue is added to the known issues log on success, we get an email. We can then check that email very quickly at a glance on phone or tablet or whatever to see, is it something that our org uses? Is it something that's likely to be affecting us, and therefore that we need to put some attention into, maybe go and do some testing? So key thing really, knowing about any potential fires before they burn down your house is the key message that we're preaching here. So be proactive and use that known issues log to your advantage. The final area is user groups, which is one that really helps us bridge the gap between a 2 million strong online community and a 7 billion strong offline community. So what are user groups? They're regular customer organized meetups. So let's think about what that means. They're customer organized, so similar to Success, these are real people, they're your peers, they're your fellow customers that are running these user groups. So again, it's authentic interaction, it's transparent messaging. They're regular. User groups tend to be run either once a month, once every 2 months, or once a quarter. But in terms of what this means for success, this link here is a listing of all the user group success groups, because every user group has its own success group as well. So what it really means is it's not just once a month or not just once a quarter that you can interact with those people. So join the success group and keep that discussion going the rest of the time. So if you visit that link, you'll find a list of nearly 250 user groups across the world, and the idea is obviously join one or more of them and start interacting. And I say join one or more of them because there's a number of different flavors of user group now. It used to be that all user groups were either a business, a kind of a generic business-focused user group targeted at stakeholders, or they were developer user groups. They were people that wanted to speak very technically and learn about JavaScript frameworks. What we have now is a growing kind of movement to have more types of user groups. So there's an admin user group. The one that I run in London is the first admin-focused user group that got added to the program. You can also find user groups that discuss certain verticals, including non-profits, and there's a growing number of women in tech user groups throughout the globe as well. So whichever one you join, or whichever one or two or three you join, go there to learn new skills, learn about Salesforce features and maybe new applications or new use cases that are going to enhance your org, and also grow you as a professional. It's not just about helping the org, it actually helps you as a person as well. But it's also not just about learning. When you're there, share your own ideas, network. It could advance your career. You might find your next employee, you might find your next employer at these events, and have fun while you do it. And nothing helps you, meet new people than discussing a shared interest over beer and pizza, or at least that's my experience anyway. So what's the secret with user groups? You get out what you put in. So the people that run user groups, they're going to put on content that they think you will like, but the only way to be sure that you're seeing what you need is to ask for it. Speak to the user group leader, have your say, tell them what you want to see. If there's a specific topic that you think you know enough about that people are interested in, volunteer to present it. And I think to a lot of people that's quite a scary thought, and it was to me before I started presenting, but you will be surprised how much you know when you start putting those slides together, or when you start thinking about the words you might use around those slides. And I think if you're starting off your presenting career, there's also probably no better audience than people that share your interests, are in the same area as you, and probably that you've met before as well. If speaking isn't for you, there are numerous other ways you can help out. Speak to the leaders, and maybe you can help to organize the content or help to organize the venue. Maybe you can even offer your office as a venue as well. All of the people that run user groups have real jobs as well. They have day jobs. So anything you can do to offer to help, I guarantee that's going to be very warmly received. And of course, looking at this map here, there are some areas that aren't covered. So if you're in a geography or you're in an industry that you feel is fairly underserved at the moment through user groups, then why not try and consider running your own? So let's just summarize some of what we've looked at here, and then we can see hopefully that we've learned something from today. So the simplest message is the one I'll start with. The community is there for you. Use it. If you're not using it, start. If you're already using it, hopefully this has taught you some things that you can maybe do better or maybe do a bit more efficiently to get the most from it. So do start it. As with any community, it's all about strength in numbers. So be proud to be a member of a community that's got 2 million members, but try and stand out from that crowd by knowing some of these hacks we've talked about today, and make sure you're using the community in the right way and understanding all of these kind of shortcuts. So to summarize, be thorough, be detailed, be considerate and grateful when you use answers. try and doorstep the PMs so you can get your functionality and your roadmap questions answered in collaboration. On the idea exchange, don't be scared to throw your voting weight around. Vote early, vote often, and remember at all times that Salesforce want those votes and they're counting on them in a very literal sense. Be proactive in terms of known issues. Let the potential bugs come to you rather than waiting to find out the hard way. Find your local user group. Keep that collaboration going offline and take the opportunity to learn and continue expanding your network in real life. But one thing that I'm really keen on, that I kind of leave, the main message I leave you with, is participate. Don't just consume, but actually give back and start adding knowledge to that success community wherever you can. Now, I'm not saying live your life there. I know we all have real jobs that we need to do, but try to spare a little time to give back to that community that makes it so valuable. Now, giving back could be as simple as just voting on an idea. It could be as valuable as helping someone answer a question or volunteering to co-lead a user group. There is a huge spectrum of involvement that you can partake in, but whatever you do, try and do something, because I guarantee you'll help others along the way, and then you'll certainly be helping yourself as well. So final message then is go out and enjoy the community. Be a good community member. Keep it as friendly and as helpful a place as it currently is, but don't just be a good one, be an informed one. Hopefully some of these tips have given you something that allows you to use a certain area in a different way or think about a certain feature in a different way, and hopefully it will help you get the most of what is quite a priceless resource. Thank you for that, and I'll hand back to Ricky.
Hi Chris, thank you so much for that. I certainly learned a lot of things myself during that webinar, so thank you very, very much for that today. We do have a couple of questions, not so many today, some interesting ones that I don't know the answers to, so perhaps you could help with this.
Sure, I'll try.
Are the profiles that you use in all of the various places you just described linked to a Salesforce license? And what happens if you lose your Salesforce license?
Yeah, they are indeed linked. So you need a Salesforce account to be able to log into Success, but that could be a developer edition account, which are obviously free and easy to come by. And actually, that's a very good tip to add on. Is if you're just in the process of signing up for Success, do so as a developer edition login, something that you will always maintain usage of, because as you just point out there, Ricky, it can sometimes bite you quite hard if you build up a reputation on Success or a backlog of things you've bookmarked that you want to come back to on Success under a work login, and you then lose it. So it's not a complete dead end. If you find yourself in that position, there is something Salesforce can do to help you out. Now, it's not, one thing that they're quite clear on is it's not a profile merge. They're not going to merge or develop your new profile with your old one, but they can do what's called a remap, which basically means it moves the data, it moves the content from your old account into your new one. But the old account still stays there because it's a Salesforce login, so it needs to. So yeah, if you're starting from scratch, definitely go with the developer edition login that you're going to keep hold of forever. If you're not fortunate enough to be in that position, don't worry. If you do lose your login, then there's probably something that they can help you out with.
Perfect. I think that answers that well. It sounds like the next person might have got burnt on Stack Overflow.
Right.
What happens if you can't find the answers, but they do already exist? Do people get sort of angry, or if the questions aren't very good because they're a beginner? What's the general rules of play?
I'll speak from a position of experience using the Success, using answers on Success. I've done a bit on Stack Exchange. I've done a bit on the developer boards, but I probably don't know enough about those communities to speak for them. My experience is that certainly no one is going to get angry with you for having a question and for posing it in the wrong way or for missing certain information. Some of the best practice we talked about on answers say, give us as much info as you have and give us as much context as you have, but there's always going to be some things that you don't think about giving because you don't think it's relevant. Like that example earlier, I want to report on accounts and their most recent activity, for example. Why does it matter what edition I'm in? Surely a report is a report, but actually no, because you can use cross filters on reports in Enterprise and above, but you can't use them in Professional and below. So I think it's actually works two ways. The community is not going to respond badly to you giving limited information, but equally make sure you don't respond badly to people asking for more information. Just be appreciative of the fact that you may not have given everything they need up front. One of the things you mentioned there is if you ask a question that already has an answer, I have seen that occasionally on Stack Overflow, where Stack Exchange, where people, if they won't give you a direct answer, they'll just link you to a related question that kind of sometimes solves it, sometimes doesn't. I don't see that so much on answers, and one of the reasons for that is that, as well as we mentioned people answer questions to increase their own knowledge, there's also a lot of gamification on answers. So the more questions you answer, the more best answers you have selected, the higher your ranking. So no, if you ask an easy question that someone's answered 10 times already that day, don't worry about it. They're gonna enjoy answering it because it's a quick win for them.
That's interesting to know. In terms of starting a user group, what is the process for that? Who decides who can start a user group?
The program manager for the user group program is Holly Goldin. So Holly runs not only the user group program but the MVP program for Salesforce as well. You can get her on Success, or I think the email is hgoldin@salesforce.com. So effectively, she is the gatekeeper that you would go to and say, I've got this idea. What do you think? Is it viable? She'll talk you through the process of setting that user group up. There are, as you'd expect, a bunch of, well, not a bunch of, but there's an agreement to sign that effectively, says you are running the user group for the right purposes, and here's the things that you can't use it for, just to make sure that the quality of each of the each of the groups in the user group program stays high. But yeah, so Holly's the best person to do that. And also, I think, speak to any local user group leaders that you might know, because you might like the idea of running a user group, but get the grassroots opinion on how much time it takes and what they enjoy and what they struggle with, because it could be that actually you want to try and get a group of people together to run it. I don't run the admin user group in London on my own. There's 4 or 5 of us now that are on that kind of organising committee to help it run, because even if you do it, we do it once a month, even if you do it once a quarter, finding the level of content that is useful but available at the right time is tricky. So yeah, I think speak to Holly if you're interested in going ahead, but probably before that, do a bit of grassroots research with other user group leaders and see what they say.
I think that brings us to the end, really, Chris. So once again, thank you so much for your time today. As you can see on the screen, everyone, we are having a week's break from the webinar, so there's no webinar next week, but the following week we're joined by the co-founder of Mavens Consulting, that's Matt Dillon. And Matt's going to be discussing how really you can implement data governance principles and strategies to keep all of your data clean, manage releases, manage essentially Salesforce not getting in a mess, which is very, very easy to do. I'm sure we've all experienced that. It's more of a case of too many admins sometimes. Anyway, yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Chris, and we'll be sending a recording of this webinar and a follow-up tomorrow morning or Monday. So thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thanks everyone.
Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.